That old surplus jacket doesn't make you a soldier, Morgan. It just makes you look desperate. The words from Master Sergeant Reeves echoed through the cavernous high school gymnasium, sharp and cruel, designed to cut. The crowd of JROTC cadets, a sea of neatly pressed khaki and polished brass, rippled with nervous energy. A few of the braver ones, the sycophants who orbited Reeves, let out syrupy snickers. Most just stared at their own gleaming shoes, suddenly finding the scuffed floor fascinating. They were complicit in their silence, unwilling to become the next target of his venom. But the target herself, 17-year-old Anya Morgan, offered no reaction. Her face, usually etched with a quiet weariness that seemed too old for her years, remained a placid mask. Her hands, steady and sure, continued their methodical work, breaking down and cleaning a competition air rifle with a practiced economy of motion that was almost hypnotic. She didn't flinch. She didn't look up. She didn't give him the satisfaction of a single tear. Her silence was a wall he could not breach, and it infuriated him. In the stands, observing the regional drills, a visiting dignitary, a 3-star general, leaned forward slightly. He didn't see a defiant teenager. He saw a posture of absolute stillness, a centered gravity that was unnervingly familiar, a ghost from a world of sand and shadows. He saw the way her fingers indexed along the rifle's receiver, a discipline taught not in a high school gym, but in places where mistakes were measured in blood. If you believe respect is earned in silence, not shouted from a podium, type earned in the comments. Master Sergeant Reeves was a man who measured his world in straight lines and loud commands. His own 20 years in the Army had culminated in a respectable but unremarkable career as a supply sergeant, a fact he conveniently omitted when regaling his cadets with tales of daring. In the small kingdom of the Northgate High JROTC program, he was a giant, his voice the law and his prejudices the curriculum. Anya Morgan, to him, was an affront to the order he cherished. She was a teen mom, a statistic, a walking cautionary tale he used to scare the freshman cadet straight. She was perpetually tired, juggling her infant daughter, a part-time job, and her studies. Yet her uniform was always immaculate. Her boots shined to a mirror finish, her knowledge of military history encyclopedic. This competence, this quiet refusal to be the victim he'd cast her as, grated on him. But his primary source of irritation was the jacket. It was an old, faded M65 field jacket, a relic from a bygone era, patched at the elbows and frayed at the cuffs. She wore it every day to and from school, a threadbare shield against the morning chill. On its sleeve was a patch so worn and sun-bleached it was little more than a ghost of thread, its insignia indecipherable. Reeves, in his infinite and superficial wisdom, had declared it a cheap knockoff, a pathetic attempt to claim a valor she couldn't possibly comprehend. He called it stolen valor, a term he wielded with the righteous fury of the truly insecure. That morning, he had decided, would be the day of his lesson. He'd confiscated the jacket in the middle of formation, holding it up like a piece of filth. This, he had boomed, is a lie now. With the general in the stands and the entire battalion as his audience, he escalated his cruel theater. He marched over to a metal trash can, the jacket dangling from his fingertips. Some of you think you can just buy heroism at a surplus store. You can't. It is earned. He dropped the jacket into the can. Anya's eyes, for the first time, flickered towards the bin, a momentary crack in her fortress of calm. Reeves saw it and smiled, a predator sensing weakness. He wanted to make an example of her, to burn away her silent defiance and expose the broken girl he was so certain lay beneath. The final event of the regional competition was the stress shoot, a complex simulation designed to test poise under pressure. It was the tiebreaker, and Northgate High was on the verge of losing. Reeves's star cadet, a swaggering senior named Miller who mirrored the instructor's own arrogance, had choked. His hands trembled, his shots went wide, his face a blotchy map of panic. The pressure had shattered his fragile confidence. Reeves paced the line, his face thunderous. He needed a substitute, and the only one left on the roster was Morgan. He scoffed audibly. The irony was thick enough to taste. The girl he'd just publicly humiliated was his last hope. "Morgan, get up here," he barked, his voice dripping with disdain. "Try not to embarrass the battalion more than Miller already has." Anya rose without a word. She moved not with the nervous energy of a teenager, but with a deliberate, fluid grace that seemed to slow time around her. She picked up the specialized M4 style training rifle, its weight familiar in her hands. The other cadets watched, a mix of pity and morbid curiosity on their faces. They saw her check the rifle's compressed air cartridge, not with a glance at the gauge, but by placing her palm against it, feeling for the subtle vibration of a full charge. She shouldered the weapon, and the entire geometry of her body shifted. Her feet found a perfect, balanced stance. Her shoulders relaxed. Her head tilted at a precise angle, her eye aligning with the optic as if she were born to it. She wasn't preparing for a high school competition. She was performing a sacred ritual, a series of movements ingrained so deeply they were instinct. Her breathing slowed, becoming a quiet, rhythmic cadence. Inhale for 3, hold for 2, exhale for 5. It was the calming technique of a Tier 1 operator, a secret whispered from a father to a daughter in a dusty backyard range years ago, a lifetime away. The starting buzzer blared, a jarring sound in the tense gymnasium. What followed was not a competition, it was a masterclass. The course was a labyrinth of pop-up targets, no-shoot civilian silhouettes, and obstacles designed to elevate the heart rate and destroy concentration. Anya flowed through it. She didn't run. She glided, her feet barely seeming to touch the floor, moving from one shooting position to the next with an unnerving economy of motion. The first set of targets appeared at 15 yards. Pop, 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 pop. 2 precise electronic hits on each, delivered in a controlled pair so fast they sounded like a single report. The scoring system flashed a cascade of green lights. She moved to the barricade, transitioning the rifle to her left shoulder to shoot from the weak side, a skill that took most soldiers months to master. She did it without thought, a seamless, mirrored motion. More green lights. The announcer, who had been providing color commentary, fell silent, unsure how to describe the chilling perfection he was witnessing. The other team stopped prepping and just watched, their mouths agape. Master Sergeant Reeves stood frozen, his face a canvas of disbelief. This was not the clumsy fumbling of a JROTC cadet. This was the lethal grace of a professional, an echo of a ghost he was not equipped to comprehend. The final stage was the hostage shot. A single hostile target, partially obscured by a no-shoot civilian, at 50 yards, an almost impossible shot with iron sights on a training rifle. The crowd held its collective breath. Anya took her position, going into a low kneeling stance. She didn't rush. She took one slow, deliberate breath, letting half of it out. In that moment of perfect stillness, the world narrowed to the front sight post, the sliver of the target, and the memory of her father's voice. Squeeze, Anya. Don't pull. Let the rifle surprise you, the rifle puffed. A single, solitary red light flashed on the scoring monitor, indicating a perfect, dead-center hit. The gymnasium was plunged into a deafening silence, a vacuum of pure shock. The only sound was the faint, electronic hum of the scoreboard, displaying a perfect score. Anya lowered the rifle, cleared the chamber, and placed it gently on the rack. Her face was as calm and unreadable as it had been when Reeves had thrown her father's jacket in the trash. An invisible line had been crossed. The fragile, constructed reality of the gymnasium, of high school hierarchies and petty tyrannies, had been shattered by an act of undeniable competence. The silence stretched on, thick with awe and confusion. Then, a new sound emerged, the slow, deliberate tread of polished dress shoes on the waxed floor. General Wallace descended from the stands, his 3 stars glinting under the harsh fluorescent lights. He was a man accustomed to command, his presence alone shifting the atmosphere in the room. He ignored the stunned judges, the babbling school officials, and the pale, trembling Master Sergeant Reeves. His eyes were fixed on only one person. He walked directly to Anya Morgan, who stood by the rifle rack, a small, still point in a sea of chaos. The general, a man who had led battalions in combat and brief presidents, stopped a respectful 2 paces from her. He didn't look at her as a child. He looked at her with the piercing, evaluative gaze of a seasoned leader recognizing one of his own. He looked at her stance, the relaxed set of her shoulders, the way she held her hands, and he saw a living legacy. He spoke, his voice quiet but carrying the weight of absolute authority. "Morgan," he said, not a question, but a statement of recognition. That jacket your instructor so carelessly discarded. The patch on the sleeve. I haven't seen one of those in a decade. Not since. Kandahar, he paused, his eyes searching her face. Tell me your father's name, young lady. Anya met his gaze, and for the first time, a flicker of emotion crossed her face. Not sadness, but a deep, quiet pride. Staff Sergeant Michael Morgan, sir, she replied, her voice steady. They called him Ghost. The name hung in the air, a piece of classified history spoken aloud in a high school gymnasium. General Wallace closed his eyes for a brief second, a flicker of memory and pain crossing his weathered face. He nodded slowly, a gesture of profound respect. I knew your father, he said softly, the words meant for her but heard by everyone in the silent room. I had the honor of pinning his silver star on him myself. He was the finest operator I ever served with. A true quiet professional. He then turned, his gaze falling upon Master Sergeant Reeves like a physical weight. The instructor flinched, visibly shrinking. Master Sergeant. The general's voice was now laced with ice. You, who preach about honor and respect. You see a girl in an old jacket. I see the daughter of a national hero, wearing the last thing her father wore on this earth before he gave his life for his country. The general gestured to his aide, a young captain who was already tapping furiously on a tablet. Pull up the service record for Staff Sergeant Michael Ghost Morgan, and cross-reference his dependent, Anya Morgan. The captain turned the screen towards Reeves. The general began to read, his voice a hammer striking down every ignorant assumption. Unit classification, Tier 1, Special Missions Unit. Combat deployments, 12. Awards, Silver Star for Valor, 2 Bronze Stars with V device, Purple Heart. He paused, letting the weight of the words sink in. Staff Sergeant Morgan was killed in action during operation. He stopped himself. During a mission that, to this day, remains classified. His personal effects, including his deployment jacket, were returned to his sole next of kin, his daughter. He looked at Anya's JROTC file on the screen. And it says here that Cadet Morgan has been a master-rated marksman since the age of 13, with over 2,000 logged hours on military ranges, privately instructed by her father. Her competence is not an accident, Master Sergeant. It is her birthright. With that, General Wallace turned back to Anya. He stood straight, drew his heels together, and rendered a slow, perfect, heartbreakingly formal salute. Miss Morgan, he said, his voice thick with emotion. On behalf of the United States Army and a grateful nation, thank you for your family's sacrifice. You wear your father's legacy well. In that moment, Anya Morgan was no longer the teen mom, the charity case, the target of ridicule. She was the daughter of a ghost, the keeper of a sacred legacy, and in the eyes of everyone present, she was royalty. The story of what happened in the Northgate Gymnasium did not spread, it detonated. It traveled through the barracks gossip of the local army base, lit up military-themed internet forums, and became a whispered legend among the JROTC battalions across the state. The grainy cell phone video of Anya's perfect run was dissected and analyzed by seasoned veterans, who marveled at her flawless technique. The narrative was powerful and irresistible. The arrogant instructor, the underestimated girl, the dramatic reveal by a 3-star general. Anya Morgan became a symbol. They called her Ghost's daughter, a name spoken with a mixture of reverence and awe. The cruel caricature Reeves had painted of her was erased, replaced by the truth of her quiet strength. For Master Sergeant Reeves, the fallout was swift and brutal. He was formally reprimanded in a letter from the general's office, a document that was placed permanently in his file, effectively ending any hope of further advancement. But the official punishment paled in comparison to the personal one. He was ordered to make a formal, public apology to Anya in front of the entire battalion. The ceremony was excruciating. He stood before the assembled cadets, his usual booming voice reduced to a halting, shame-filled mumble. He spoke of his failure of leadership, his ignorance, his prejudice. He then walked to the trash can, retrieved the jacket with his own hands, and presented it to her. The cadets watched, their faces grim. They were not witnessing justice. They were witnessing the complete deconstruction of a man who had built his identity on a foundation of false superiority. His authority was gone, not taken by a superior officer, but surrendered in the face of his own profound failure. He was a hollow man, haunted by the ghost of a soldier far better than he, and the quiet daughter who embodied that soldier's true spirit. Anya accepted the apology and the jacket with a simple, quiet nod. There was no triumph in her eyes, no hint of, "I told you so." That was not her way. Her victory was not in his humiliation, but in the simple, profound act of honoring her father. The jacket, now back in her possession, seemed to carry a different weight. It was no longer just a source of comfort. It was a recognized symbol of sacrifice, a mantle of honor she had proven worthy of wearing. The dynamic within the JROTC program shifted overnight. The cadets who had once mocked her now looked at her with a deep, unspoken respect. They saw her not as the struggling teen mom, but as the standard bearer. They approached her hesitantly at first, asking for advice on the shooting range. She never spoke of the incident, never mentioned Reeves's apology. Instead, she just helped. She would watch them shoot, and with a few quiet words, correct a flaw in their stance or their breathing. "You're pulling the trigger," she'd say softly to a struggling freshman. "Don't think about making the shot. Just breathe. Let your body do the work." She was teaching them the things her father had taught her, passing on the legacy not through stories of glory, but through the quiet discipline of action. A new tradition was born in the battalion. The specific lane on the range where she had made her perfect run was now known as the Morgan Line. Cadets vied for the honor of shooting from it. And the final paper target from the hostage scenario, the one with the single, perfect hole in its center, was retrieved from the scoring machine. It was framed and mounted on the wall of the JROTC classroom, right next to the pictures of decorated generals and past battalion commanders. There was no nameplate beneath it, no lengthy explanation. None was needed. It was a permanent, silent testament to the day that a quiet girl taught a loud man, and an entire battalion, the true meaning of competence, character, and respect. A year passed. The seasons turned, and the echoes of that day in the gymnasium settled into the foundation of the school's culture. Anya Morgan graduated with honors, her infant daughter on her hip as she crossed the stage to receive her diploma, the applause for her louder than for anyone else. General Wallace had kept his word. His personal recommendation had opened doors that were usually sealed shut. Anya enlisted, but she wasn't sent to basic training. She was fast-tracked into an advanced intelligence analysis program, her sharp mind and unshakable calm recognized as assets of immense value. Her path was set, not to follow in her father's footsteps in the field, but to honor his legacy in the silent, cerebral world of strategy and information, protecting soldiers like him from the shadows. Back at Northgate High, Master Sergeant Reeves stood before a new class of nervous, eager freshmen. He was a different man. The swagger was gone, replaced by a quiet gravity. The sarcasm had been sanded away, leaving behind a hard-earned humility. He held up the framed target, the one with the single hole. "This," he began, his voice steady and reverent, "is the most important lesson you will learn in this program. It's not about marksmanship. It's about assumptions." He told them the story of Anya Morgan. He didn't spare himself, detailing his own arrogance, his own blindness. He told them about the old, faded jacket and the hero who had worn it. He used his own failure as a teaching tool, a cautionary tale far more powerful than any he had ever invented about teen mothers. The story had become his penance and his most profound lecture. The legend of Anya Morgan was now institutional folklore, a foundational myth for the Northgate JROTC. The phrase, "Remember Morgan," became a quiet admonishment among the cadets, a reminder to never judge a person by their appearance, their circumstances, or the volume of their voice. It was a call to look deeper, to recognize the strength that resides in stillness, and to understand that the most capable people are often the last to announce themselves. Anya hadn't sought to build a legacy. She had simply refused to let her fathers be defiled. Her silence had never been a sign of weakness. It was a fortress, built brick by brick with discipline, grief, and a profound love for the man who had taught her to be steady in the storm. She understood what Reeves never had. That true strength doesn't need an audience. It doesn't require validation from the loud or the ignorant. It is proven in the quiet moments of preparation, in the flawless execution of a difficult task, and in the unwavering dignity you maintain when the world is determined to strip it from you. True legacy isn't a story you tell about yourself. It's the standard you uphold when no one is watching, a standard that inspires others to be better, to look closer, and to listen to the powerful wisdom of silence. It's the quiet competence that echoes forever, long after all the shouting has faded into meaningless noise. For more stories where quiet dedication triumphs over loud ignorance, and where character defines their worth, subscribe to Unknown Heroine Stories.